15 years ago, a struggling comedian took a wrong turn, and that mistake almost cost him his life. What he experienced that night was not just bad luck, it felt planned. Back then, he was in his early 20s, young, reckless, and chasing a dream that rarely pays. He wanted to be a stand-up comedian, not because he was the smartest or had a backup plan, but because he could make people laugh. That was his only talent. While others went to college or found stable jobs, he chose the stage, and the stage chose to reject him. Night after night he faced silence, awkward stares, and forced smiles, but every once in a while a crowd would laugh, and that feeling was addictive enough to keep him going. Stand-up was never glamorous. It meant driving for hours just for 5 minutes on stage, no money, no recognition, just hope. And one night, hope led him somewhere he should never have gone. He got an opportunity, a comedy competition 5 hours away. The prize was $1,000, but more importantly, real comedians would be judging. This was his chance to finally be seen. There was just one problem: his car was falling apart and his phone barely worked, but he still left early because deep down he knew something always went wrong. The road stretched endlessly with fields and silence, and somewhere along the way he got lost. The directions didn't match, the roads felt unfamiliar, but instead of turning back, he kept going. Eventually he reached a town, if it could even be called that. There were a few broken buildings, an old gas station, and people standing still, watching. Their faces looked worn, not angry, not hostile, just empty. When he asked for directions, they answered coldly, too cold. As he filled his tank, he noticed something strange. They were still there, staring, not moving, not speaking, just watching him like statues. Feeling uneasy, he left as quickly as possible, trying to laugh it off and even thinking about turning the experience into a joke, but deep down something felt wrong. Not long after, a white pickup truck raced past him, moving too fast, but he ignored it. An hour passed and darkness took over. There were no houses, no lights, just trees and silence. Then suddenly, a loud snap echoed from beneath the car, and he lost control. He pulled over and what he saw made no sense. Both front tires were completely destroyed, shredded, and filled with nails. This was not an accident, someone had done this. With no signal and no help, he sat there in the darkness as fear slowly crept in. Then headlights appeared behind him. They stopped far enough to hide, but close enough to watch. Minutes passed and the car didn't move, then slowly it started coming closer. At the same time, another set of headlights appeared from the front, approaching quickly. In that moment, he realized the truth. He wasn't stranded, he was surrounded. The vehicle in front stopped and its doors opened, and under the dim light he saw it clearly, the same white pickup truck from earlier. Suddenly a loud bang hit his window. He turned and froze. It was the man from the gas station, his face empty and his eyes dead. The man violently pulled at the door while another moved to the passenger side, both trying to break in. They didn't speak, they didn't respond, just grunted like animals. Then without warning, the man stopped and stared directly at him before letting out a horrifying scream. It wasn't human, it wasn't normal, it was a howl that didn't belong in this world. That's when instinct took over. He kicked the door open, knocking the man down, and ran into the darkness. Instead of running deep into the woods, he dropped to the ground just a few feet in and stayed still. Moments later, he heard multiple footsteps running past him. They thought he had gone deeper, but they were wrong. Slowly he got up and ran back to his car, grabbed his bag and phone, and ran again without looking back. He kept running down the road, expecting at any moment to be dragged into the darkness, but they never came. After what felt like forever, a car finally appeared. A woman stopped and helped him, calling the police and staying with him until they arrived. He told the officers everything, but there was no proof, no evidence, just a damaged car and a terrified man. He never found out who those people were or what they wanted, but one thing was certain, they were not trying to help. Some roads are not meant to be taken, some places are not meant to be found, and sometimes getting lost means someone else was waiting for you. She still doesn't feel right after what happened last summer. What was supposed to be a fun girls' road trip turned into something she can't fully explain and may never truly get over. She has always been the type of person who needs everything planned in advance. Every detail, every step, every possibility accounted for. That's how she feels in control. But life doesn't always respect control. In late June, her 5-year relationship ended. It was messy, painful, and emotionally exhausting. The only thing that helped her cope was her friend Sarah, who had just gone through a breakup as well. Their shared pain brought them closer, and somehow, supporting each other made things a little easier. A few weeks later, their friend Alyssa invited them on a cross-country road trip. Normally, she would have refused instantly. The uncertainty alone would have overwhelmed her. But this time, something inside her said yes. Maybe it was the heartbreak, or maybe she just needed to escape. Alyssa was everything she wasn't: free-spirited, fearless, and always chasing adventure. She lived for the unknown and had no problem sleeping under the open sky. Sarah and she were much more reserved, so they let Alyssa take control of the trip and guide them wherever she wanted to go. At first, the lack of structure was uncomfortable. The first couple of days felt chaotic and unfamiliar. But slowly, she began to enjoy the freedom, the spontaneity, and the sense of being somewhere new without a plan. Then they saw the barn. It stood alone in the middle of nowhere, old, broken, and completely covered in vines. Something about it felt off immediately. Alyssa was excited and wanted to explore it, but she refused. She tried to justify it by saying they shouldn't trespass, but the truth was she was scared. After a brief argument, they left and continued their trip. But Alyssa kept bringing up the barn over the next few days, mentioning it again and again like she couldn't forget it. Eventually, on their way back, Alyssa convinced them to return. It was late afternoon when they arrived. The barn looked exactly the same, silent and waiting. They parked a short distance away and approached carefully. Inside, the barn felt strange. The wood creaked constantly, almost like it was alive. There was odd equipment scattered around, rusted and unfamiliar, nothing like normal farm tools. It felt unsettling, but they ignored it and explored anyway. Then Alyssa suggested they check the farmhouse. This time, there was no hesitation. They forced the door open and stepped inside. The house was empty, not just abandoned but completely stripped of life. There was no furniture except for a small green table and a single wooden chair. It felt sad, like a place that had been forgotten. They spent some time inside, talking and imagining what it might have been like when someone lived there. Then, almost casually, the idea came up to stay the night. It should have sounded like a terrible idea, but in that moment, it felt exciting. By nightfall, they had brought their things inside. They ate, drank, laughed, and set up their sleeping bags. Everything felt normal again. Around 9 p.m., they went to sleep. But she couldn't rest. She drifted in and out of sleep, never fully comfortable. Then, sometime around 3 a.m., she woke up. She thought she heard a soft sound, like someone whispering, "SHH." She sat up and looked around, but the room was dark and still. Nothing moved. Nothing made sense. She convinced herself it was nothing and laid back down. Almost instantly, a loud bang shook the door. All three of them woke up and froze. They didn't move, didn't speak, just listened. Then came a soft tapping sound from the window. And then another loud bang on the door. It was clear now. This wasn't the wind or the house settling. Someone was outside. And they knew the girls were inside. They huddled together, terrified and unable to react. Suddenly, the door slowly opened. 3 people stepped inside, 2 men and 1 woman. They looked thin, quiet, and unsettling. They didn't rush or act aggressively at first. They simply walked in and stood there, staring. Sarah screamed. One of the men immediately screamed back in the exact same way, like he was copying her. The woman stepped forward and softly tried to shush her. Meanwhile, the man in the middle made strange hand gestures, almost like he was performing silently. Then all three of them put on masks. The masks were unnatural and disturbing. One was a large purple cube with no features. Another looked like a poorly made mask resembling something familiar but twisted. The woman's mask had strange plastic shapes hanging from it like teeth. They slowly began to move closer. The more the girls panicked, the more agitated the masked figures became. When the girls screamed, the figures screamed louder in response. Suddenly, the woman grabbed her shoulders. Instinct took over, and she pushed the woman to the ground. That brief moment of distraction gave them a chance. Sarah pulled out pepper spray and sprayed it toward the figures. It worked. The girls ran. As they rushed out, the woman grabbed her ankle, but she managed to break free. While running, she glanced back and saw the woman reaching behind her back, as if grabbing something hidden. They didn't wait to find out what it was. They ran to the car, got inside, and drove away as fast as they could. Even as they left, they could still hear the distant screaming from the house. They didn't stop driving until they were far, far away. They made it home safely, but they were not the same. They never reported the incident. Maybe it was fear, maybe it was guilt for trespassing, or maybe they knew no one would believe them. But the most disturbing part was something they couldn't explain. Those people weren't there earlier. There were no signs of life, no footprints, no vehicles, nothing. And yet, in the middle of the night, they appeared. Out of nowhere. As if they had been waiting. She still thinks about that night. And she knows one thing for sure. Some places aren't just abandoned. Some places are waiting. A few years ago, a man set out on a cross-country road trip with the woman he loved, planning to make it one of the most special moments of his life. He intended to propose to her during the journey, hoping to create a memory they would cherish forever. And while that dream did come true, the trip became unforgettable for a much darker reason, one that nearly cost them both their lives. He owned a pickup truck with a large cargo bed, big enough to fit an air mattress. Instead of traditional camping, they chose to sleep in the back of the truck, enjoying a mix of comfort and wilderness. It felt safer than tents and easier than sleeping on the ground, allowing them to rest under the open sky each night. The experience felt peaceful and almost magical. Every night, they would lie together staring at the stars, surrounded by silence and nature. But while he enjoyed the calm, his girlfriend struggled. She was an extremely light sleeper, waking up at the slightest sound. Every gust of wind, every rustle in the trees, and every distant noise would disturb her rest. Her fear went deeper than just being a light sleeper. She had a strong fear of bears, something that had been planted in her mind after hearing a terrifying story from someone she knew. Because of that, every sound in the wilderness became something dangerous in her imagination. About 3/4 into their trip, he finally proposed, and she said yes. It was one of the happiest moments of his life. That night, for once, everything felt perfect, and he slept peacefully. The next morning, however, she looked exhausted. When he asked her what was wrong, she hesitated before telling him that she had heard something during the night. Not animals, but footsteps. She believed someone had been walking around the truck, close enough that she could clearly hear movement. She even thought she heard faint whispering. He tried to stay calm and rational, assuming it might have been her fear playing tricks on her mind. But then she showed him something that made him pause. In the dirt near the truck, there appeared to be a small footprint. While he wasn't completely convinced, he couldn't fully explain it either. Before they left, he checked the truck thoroughly to make sure no one was hiding nearby or inside. Everything seemed normal, except for one strange detail. His planner was lying open in the back seat, turned to a page listing all the places they planned to visit. He didn't remember leaving it there, but he dismissed it as a simple mistake. They continued their journey, trying to enjoy the day as usual. They laughed, hiked, and acted like nothing was wrong. But as night approached, a strange feeling settled in. Even he began to sense that something wasn't right. They set up their sleeping space again in the truck bed. His fiancée was noticeably more uneasy than before, not because of animals, but because of the idea that someone might be nearby. He offered to sleep inside the locked truck or find a hotel, but she insisted on spending one last night under the stars. That night, he decided to stay awake until she fell asleep. It took some time, but eventually she drifted off around midnight. The world around them became quiet again, but this time the silence felt heavy and unnatural. As he tried to rest, he heard something outside. Soft footsteps moving around the truck. He slowly moved to the edge of the truck bed and carefully looked over. What he saw made his heart race. A small figure wearing a hood was walking near the front of the truck, mumbling to itself. He quickly lowered himself back down, trying not to make any noise. His mind raced as he tried to decide what to do. He didn't know if the person was alone or if they were armed. All he knew was that he needed to protect his fiancée. The figure continued walking around the truck. When he looked again, he noticed blonde hair beneath the hood and realized it was a woman. He could now clearly hear her whispering as she moved. He quickly came up with a plan. Using his phone, he typed a message telling his fiancée not to make any sound and to start the truck when he distracted the person. He woke her gently and showed her the message before she could speak. Though terrified, she remained silent. He handed her the keys and quietly jumped out of the truck, hoping to scare the intruder away. But when he landed, no one was there. The area was completely empty. Before he could process what was happening, a sudden sharp pain shot through his ankle, and he fell to the ground. The woman had been hiding underneath the truck. She crawled out screaming wildly and attacked him with a heavy branch. He tried to defend himself as she swung again. Then he saw a knife in her hand. She began to swing it erratically, forcing him to back away. Realizing they needed to escape immediately, he shouted for his fiancée to start the truck. The engine roared to life, and the woman suddenly turned toward the vehicle and began running toward it. But it was too late. The truck moved, kicking up dust as it sped away. As she drove toward him to pick him up, he finally saw the attacker's face clearly. It was his ex-girlfriend. Years ago, she had shown unstable behavior, even going as far as stalking him after their breakup. He had involved the authorities back then, but eventually she disappeared from his life. And now, somehow, she had found him again in the middle of nowhere. She collapsed to her knees, crying, but he didn't go near her. Not after what had just happened. He quickly got into the truck, and they drove away without looking back. Later, when they contacted the police, she didn't deny anything. She admitted she had planned to harm his fiancée. When asked about him, she broke down in tears. She was eventually taken into an institution, where she remains. Years have passed since that night, and nothing has happened since. But the memory never truly faded. Because sometimes, the most dangerous thing in the wilderness is not an animal. It's someone who refuses to let go.